The desert sun beat mercilessly on Eleanor Hartwell's back as she stumbled through the Arizona territory, her torn calico dress clinging to her bloodied skin. 3 days since she'd fled her uncle's ranch. 3 days since she'd watched him strike the match that was meant to force her into marriage with Jacob Mercer, a man whose cruelty was whispered about in every saloon from Tucson to Phoenix. She'd chosen the wilderness over that fate. But now, with her lips cracked and bleeding, her canteen empty since yesterday, she wondered if she'd simply chosen a slower death. The trading post appeared like a mirage, a squat adobe building with a crooked sign that read, Sullivan's. Eleanor's fingers closed around the thin gold band on her right hand, her mother's wedding ring, the last precious thing she owned. Inside, the proprietor eyed her with the cold assessment of a man who'd seen too many desperate souls. Water, she whispered, sliding the ring across the scarred wooden counter. Please, it's real gold. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. Thank you. Before the man could respond, the door swung open, flooding the dim interior with blinding light. A figure stepped through, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace of someone who belonged to this harsh land rather than merely survived in it. Eleanor's breath caught. His skin was the color of desert copper, his hair black as a raven's wing and falling past his shoulders, held back by a beaded leather band. He wore buckskin pants and a simple cotton shirt, both well-made but worn from use. But it was his eyes that held her frozen, dark as obsidian, sharp with intelligence, and fixed directly on her trembling hand, still touching the ring. "Put that away," he said, his English accented but clear. He moved to the counter with purposeful strides, placing several coins down. "Give her water, food, and whatever supplies she needs." His gaze never left Eleanor's face. Gold isn't what matters here. Life is. The proprietor snatched up the coins quickly. "That'll do, Neshoba. I'll get the lady." "I'll take care of her." The man, Neshoba, took the canteen Sullivan handed over and brought it to Eleanor's lips himself. "Slow," he instructed gently. "Sip. Don't gulp or you'll be sick." The water was salvation, cool and clean. Eleanor's eyes fluttered closed in relief, but his voice brought them open again. "Look at me while you drink. I need to see if you're going to faint." His eyes held concern, not the hungry appraisal she'd grown accustomed to from men. When she'd drunk enough, he lowered the canteen and studied the bruises on her arms, the cut on her cheek, the desperate exhaustion in every line of her body. "Who did this?" "It doesn't matter now." Eleanor's voice was hoarse. "I'm far enough away." No one is ever far enough from the men who do such things. His jaw tightened. "But you're safe now. My name is Neshoba, of the Chiricahua Apache. I have a camp in the mountains, but days' ride from here. You need rest, healing. Come with me." Every lesson Eleanor had learned about propriety, about the supposed savagery of Indians, about trusting strange men, screamed at her to refuse. But those lessons came from the same people who'd sold her like livestock, who'd beaten her for resisting, who'd left her to die in the desert. And this man's eyes held something she hadn't seen in so long, she'd almost forgotten it existed. Respect. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. "Because someone should have helped my sister when she needed it." Pain flickered across his features, gone as quickly as summer lightning. Because you're a person worth saving, not property to be traded. Eleanor's knees buckled. Nashoba caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. Sullivan, pack supplies for 2 weeks. Put it on my account. Folks ain't gonna like you taking a white woman to your camp, Nashoba. Then folks can come tell me themselves. There was steel in his voice, the quiet confidence of a man who'd faced down worse than gossip. And they can see what I do to men who hurt women. Eleanor woke on a travois, being pulled behind a paint horse, the sky above her painted in shades of orange and pink. Nashoba rode ahead, his posture relaxed but alert, clearly monitoring the landscape for threats. When he noticed her stirring, he stopped and came to check on her. "We're 2 hours from my camp. How do you feel?" "Like I've been dragged behind a horse instead of carried by one." Eleanor tried to smile. "Thank you for everything." He knelt beside the travois, offering her more water and a piece of dried meat. "Eat slowly. Your stomach needs to remember how." As she ate, Eleanor studied him. He was perhaps 30 years old, his face all strong angles and sharp planes, a thin scar running from his temple to his jaw. His hands were large, calloused from work, but gentle when they steadied the water for her. Everything about him spoke of strength, tempered by purpose. "Why do you live alone in the mountains?" she asked. "I don't live alone. My mother and younger brother live with me. We chose to leave our band." His expression darkened. "There are those among my people who believe we should drive all whites from our land with violence. There are whites who believe all Apache should be hunted like animals. I believe neither path leads anywhere but to more death. So we farm, we hunt, we trade fairly with those willing to trade with us. It's a small life, but it's honest." "And lonely?" He met her eyes. "Until today." Yes. Something in the way he said it made Eleanor's heart quicken. She looked away, suddenly aware of how inappropriate it was to feel anything in her current state. Filthy, battered, dependent on his charity. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted quietly. "No family who'll claim me now that I've run. No money, no skills beyond basic housework." "Then learn new skills." Nashoba stood, returning to his horse. "My mother needs help with the corn and squash. The horses need training. There's always water to haul, hides to tan, a dozen tasks for another pair of hands. Stay as long as you need. When you're ready to leave, I'll take you wherever you want to go." "Just like that?" He looked back at her, and in the dying light, his face could have been carved from the mountains themselves, timeless, immovable, certain. Just like that. Nashoba's camp was nestled in a hidden valley, accessible only by a narrow canyon path that could be easily defended. A small stream ran through it, feeding a garden where corn, beans, and squash grew in neat rows. There were 2 structures, a traditional wickiup made of wooden poles and covered with brush, and a small adobe cabin with a proper roof. Smoke rose from the cabin's chimney, and as they approached, a woman emerged. She was perhaps 50, her hair streaked with silver, her face lined but kind. She took in Eleanor's condition with one comprehensive glance and began speaking rapidly in Apache. Nashoba answered in the same language, his tone respectful. The woman nodded and gestured for Eleanor to follow her. "My mother, Kimmy, says you'll sleep in the cabin. She'll help you wash and tend your wounds." Nashoba translated. "I sleep in the wickiup with my brother, Chayton. He's 14 and will be curious about you, but he's been raised to be respectful. If he bothers you, tell me. I don't want to put anyone out." "You're not." Kimmy's English was heavily accented but firm. "You need healing. We have space. No more talk of putting out." She took Eleanor's arm with surprising gentleness. "Come. Hot water, Clean clothes, medicine, then food, then sleep. Tomorrow we talk. The kindness broke something in Eleanor. Tears spilled down her cheeks as Kimmy led her into the cabin, and the older woman simply held her, rocking slightly, murmuring words Eleanor didn't understand, but felt in her bones were comforting. For the first time in years, Eleanor let herself cry. Not the silent tears she'd learned to hide, but great, shuddering sobs that left her gasping. When the storm passed, Kimmy heated water and helped Eleanor wash, her touch gentle on the bruises and cuts. She applied a pungent salve that stung, but immediately began to ease the pain, then dressed Eleanor in a simple buckskin dress, soft from years of wear. It was too large, but Kimmy belted it efficiently. "Neshoba's wife," Kimmy said quietly, her eyes sad. "Dead 2 years. Fever took her and their unborn child. He keeps her things because he cannot yet let go. But I think maybe now he can start to heal too." Eleanor's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry. Life brings sorrow, but also brings new chances." Kimmy studied her face. "You are strong. Broken, but strong like my son. Maybe together you make something whole." "I'm not staying," Eleanor protested. "I can't impose on your kindness for more than—" "Hush. Eat." Kimmy pressed a bowl of stew into her hands. "Tomorrow, you decide things. Tonight, you just be alive." The stew was rich with meat and vegetables, seasoned with herbs Eleanor didn't recognize, but tasted like safety, like home, like the opposite of everything she'd fled. She ate until the bowl was empty, then couldn't remember being led to a bed, only the sensation of sinking into furs and blankets, and the knowledge that for the first night in months, she could sleep without fear. Eleanor woke to the sound of voices outside the cabin. Neshoba, giving instructions to someone younger, his tone patient. She rose, body stiff, but significantly less painful than the day before, and stepped outside into morning sunlight that turned the valley gold. Neshoba stood by the horse corral with a boy who had to be Chaitin. Same sharp features, same dark eyes, though his were lit with youthful curiosity. When he saw Eleanor, he grinned and waved, then said something in Apache that made Neshoba's expression turn stern. The boy's smile vanished, and he nodded seriously before running off toward the stream. "What did he say?" Eleanor asked as Neshoba approached. "Something impolite about your appearance that required correction." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "He's 14. Every woman looks good to him. But he knows better than to be disrespectful." Eleanor felt herself blush. "And what do you think?" The question escaped before she could stop it, bold and entirely inappropriate. But Neshoba didn't seem offended. Instead, he studied her with the same careful attention he'd given the landscape yesterday, as if truly seeing her. "I think you look like someone who survived when survival should have been impossible," he said finally. "I think your eyes are the color of the sky just before dawn, that particular blue that promises the darkness is ending. And I think you should eat breakfast, and then decide if you want to learn to ride properly, or help my mother with the garden." It wasn't a romantic answer, but somehow it satisfied Eleanor more than any flowery compliment could have. He saw her as a person, not an ornament. "Riding," she decided. "I'd like to learn to ride." "Good." He gestured toward the corral. "We'll start with understanding horses, not sitting on them. Come." The next hours passed in what felt like a different world. Neshoba introduced her to each horse by name and personality, the paint mare who was gentle but lazy, the buckskin gelding who was smart but stubborn, the spotted yearling who was still learning manners. He showed her how to approach them, how to read their body language, how to earn their trust before expecting their obedience. Like people, Eleanor observed, you have to listen before you can be heard. Exactly. Neshoba looked pleased. You understand, many whites think horses are tools, things to be controlled by force. But force only teaches fear, and fear makes mistakes. Trust makes partners. He stood behind her as she brushed the paint mare, his hand covering hers to show her the direction the horse preferred, the pressure that soothed versus irritated. Eleanor was acutely aware of his warmth at her back, the strength in his frame, the steady rhythm of his breathing. When the mare leaned into the brush, sighing with contentment, Eleanor felt a ridiculous surge of pride. She likes you, Neshoba said, his voice close to her ear. Animals know honest hearts. What does that say about the people who hurt me? The question came out bitter. His hand tightened over hers, just for a moment. That they lost their hearts long ago, or never had them to begin with. He stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. Enough for today. Your arms will ache tomorrow if you do more. Help my mother if you have energy. Rest if you don't. Eleanor spent the afternoon with Kimmy, learning which plants were weeds and which were food, how to tell when corn was ready to harvest, the proper way to grind dried corn into flour. It was simple work, physical work, and something about it soothed her. No one criticized if she was slow. No one struck her for asking questions. Kimmy taught with patient repetition. And when Eleanor's hands bled from the rough corn stalks, the older woman simply treated the cuts and showed her how to wrap them. That evening, they ate together, all four of them, sitting around a fire outside the wickiup. Chayton asked Eleanor a dozen questions about where she came from, what white towns were like, whether it was true that women wore restrictive corsets that prevented breathing. Neshoba's corrections came regularly but kindly, teaching his brother the line between curiosity and rudeness. "Why did you run?" Chayton asked finally, and Neshoba's warning look came too late to stop it. Eleanor could have deflected, changed the subject, protected herself. But these people had shown her nothing but kindness. They deserved honesty. Because the man my uncle wanted me to marry beat his last wife so badly, she lost the ability to walk. Because my uncle drank away my inheritance and needed Mercer's money. Because I would rather die free in the desert than live as that man's property. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Then Kimmy spoke, her words fierce. Neshoba translated quietly. My mother says any man who raises his hand to a woman is not a man at all, but a coward wearing a man's skin. She says you did right to run, and if this Mercer comes here, he will learn what happens to cowards who threaten Apache hospitality. She's not alone in that opinion, Neshoba added, his voice carrying the weight of a promise. You're under our protection now, Eleanor. That means something. Eleanor believed him. More than that, she believed in him, in his quiet strength, his thoughtful nature, the way he treated his mother and brother with respect and affection. That night, falling asleep to the sound of the stream and the distant call of a night bird, Eleanor let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it might be like to stay. The days fell into a rhythm. Mornings with the horses, learning to sit properly, to guide with her legs and seat rather than harsh hands on the reins. Afternoons helping Kimmy with endless tasks, preserving meat, sewing clothes, gathering wild herbs for medicine and cooking. Evenings around the fire, listening to Chaitin's enthusiastic stories about his hunting attempts, Kimmy's quiet wisdom, Neshoba's occasional comments that revealed more than he probably intended about the loneliness he'd carried. Eleanor's body healed. The bruises faded to yellow, then disappeared. The cuts closed and scabbed over. Her hands grew calloused from work, her skin darker from the sun, her muscles stronger from physical labor. But more than her body healed, some tight, frightened thing inside her chest began to loosen, to remember what it felt like to laugh at Chaitin's terrible jokes, to take pride in a well-cooked meal, to feel the simple satisfaction of a day's honest work completed. And through it all, she became increasingly aware of Neshoba, the way he moved, economical and graceful, the rare smile that transformed his face from stern to beautiful, the gentleness in his hands when he adjusted her position on the horse, when he treated a cut on her finger, when he helped his mother lift heavy water buckets, the intelligence in his eyes when he spoke of the land, of animals, of the complicated balance required to live in peace with both nature and the violent world of men. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded for just a moment before he looked away. In those glimpses, she saw hunger, but also hesitation, fear even, as if he wanted something but didn't believe he deserved it. 3 weeks into her stay, everything changed. Eleanor had finally progressed to riding alone, just circles in the corral, but riding nonetheless. She was concentrating so hard on keeping her seat and guiding the gentle mare that she didn't notice the rider approaching, until Neshoba's sharp whistle made her look up. A white man sat on a nervous gray horse at the canyon entrance, rifle across his saddle. U.S. Marshal badge glinting on his vest. Eleanor's heart stopped. "That's far enough," Neshoba called out in English, his own rifle appearing in his hands as if by magic. "State your business." "I'm looking for a woman. Eleanor Hartwell, white, blonde, early 20s. Ran away from her family about a month ago." The marshal's voice was professionally neutral. "Her uncle filed a report. Says she's not in her right mind. Might be dangerous to herself." Eleanor felt ice flood her veins. Of course Uncle Richard would paint it that way. Would make her the problem. Would use the law to drag her back to hell. "Haven't seen any woman fitting that description," Neshoba lied smoothly. "Just me, my mother, and my brother here." The marshal's gaze swept the camp and landed on Eleanor, still mounted in the corral, wearing buckskin and with her blonde hair braided in the Apache style Kimmy had taught her. Recognition flared in his eyes. "Ma'am, are you Eleanor Hartwell?" Every instinct screamed at Eleanor to lie, to stay silent. But she'd spent too many years being silent. "I am," she said, her voice carrying across the distance. "And I'm not going back." "Ma'am, your uncle says you're not well, that you need help." "What I need," Eleanor interrupted, guiding the mare closer, "is to never see my uncle or Jacob Mercer again. My uncle gambled away my inheritance and tried to sell me to a man known throughout the territory for beating women. I'm not sick. I'm free, and I'm choosing to stay here." The marshal looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I understand there might be family difficulties, but no." Neshoba stepped forward, placing himself between Eleanor and the marshal. "You don't understand. You see a white woman living with Apache and assume she's a captive or confused. Look at her. Does she look captive, beaten, starved? Or does she look like someone who finally found safety. The marshal did look, really look. Eleanor met his gaze steadily, letting him see the truth in her eyes, in her bearing, in the absence of fear. After a long moment, he sighed. "Miss Hartwell, are you here of your own free will?" "Completely. And you don't want to return to your uncle's custody?" "I'd rather face a firing squad." He nodded slowly. "Then legally, there's nothing I can do. You're of age, clearly sound of mind, and making your own choices." He fixed Neshoba with a hard stare. "But if I hear reports of trouble, if there's any indication she's being held against her will, I'll be back with enough men to turn this valley into a battlefield. Understood?" "Understood," Neshoba replied calmly. "But there won't be trouble. Eleanor is free to leave whenever she chooses. She chooses to stay." After the marshal left, Eleanor dismounted on shaking legs. The reality of what almost happened crashed over her. She'd nearly been dragged back, nearly lost this fragile peace she'd found. Neshoba was beside her in an instant, steadying her. "You stood up to a marshal," he said, something like pride in his voice. "You told your truth, even when it would have been safer to stay quiet." "I'm tired of being quiet." Eleanor looked up at him, at this man who'd protected her, taught her, given her space to heal without demanding anything in return. "I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm tired of pretending I don't feel." She stopped, the words too bold, too dangerous. "Feel what?" His voice was low, intense. His hands still held her arms, keeping her upright, keeping her close. "You know what?" Eleanor's heart thundered. "You feel it too. I see it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching, in the way you find excuses to touch me when we're working with the horses, in the way your voice changes when you say my name." "Eleanor," his grip tightened. "You've been through trauma. You're grateful for safety. That's not the same as, don't." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. "Don't tell me what I feel. I know the difference between gratitude and this thing that makes my breath catch when you're near, that makes me lie awake at night remembering how your hands feel on mine, that makes me want to stay, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I can't imagine being anywhere you aren't." His eyes closed, as if her words caused pain. "I'm Apache, you're white. The world doesn't forgive such things. The world already doesn't forgive me for running, for choosing myself over duty, for wearing buckskin and learning Apache ways. Why should I care what else it won't forgive?" Eleanor stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. "Besides, I'm not asking the world's permission. I'm asking you. Do you want me to stay? Not as a worker, not as a guest, as—" the words stuck in her throat, too enormous to speak. "As mine," he finished, his eyes opening, dark and intense and full of something that made her dizzy. "Yes, God help me, yes. From the moment I saw you in that trading post, trying to trade your last precious thing just to survive, I knew you were someone extraordinary. And every day since, watching you heal, watching you grow strong, watching you laugh with my mother and tease my brother." He cupped her face in his hands, touch reverent. "I want you to stay. Not because you need protection, because I need you." Eleanor rose on her toes and kissed him. It was clumsy, too hard at first, the kiss of someone out of practice, someone who'd forgotten that kisses could be wanted rather than endured. But Neshoba gentled it, his lips soft against hers, patient, giving her time to remember, to relearn, to understand that this could be something good. His arms wrapped around her, strong and secure, and Eleanor felt something fundamental shift in her chest, the last locked door finally opening. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Neshoba rested his forehead against hers. "We should talk to my mother. Do this properly." "What does properly mean?" "It means I formally ask permission to court you. Then we court. Properly, where everyone can see. No secrets, no shame. And if you still want me, after you've had time to be sure, I ask you to marry me, to bind your life to mine, in both Apache tradition and white law, so no one can ever claim you were taken or coerced." It was so serious, so formal, so utterly unlike the desperate scrambling of men who'd tried to claim her before. This was respect. This was choice. This was love, offered, not demanded. "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "To all of it. Yes." Kimmy, predictably, was not surprised. She simply smiled, nodded, and began planning what she called the proper way to welcome a daughter. This involved teaching Eleanor more Apache language, more cultural traditions, and, most importantly, how to prepare the wedding clothes that would tell everyone in the surrounding settlements that this union was wanted, celebrated, chosen by all parties. Chayton was more dramatic in his response, whooping and dancing around the fire, declaring that now he'd have a sister who could teach him English curses and how to talk to white girls. Neshoba cuffed him lightly upside the head, but was grinning. The courting period was both wonderful and frustrating. Neshoba insisted on propriety. No more kisses stolen in the corral, no private moments that could be misconstrued. They worked side by side during the day, sat beside each other at meals, walked along the stream in the evenings, while Kimmy and Chayton provided chaperone visibility from the cabin. They talked. Endless conversations about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts, dreams, fears. Eleanor learned about his wife, the love he'd had for her, the devastation of losing her and their child. She learned about the political pressures that had split their band, about his decision to seek peace rather than vengeance, about the loneliness of walking a path different from his people's expectations. In turn, she told him everything, the slow erosion of safety after her parents died, her uncle's descent into drink and debt, the growing horror as she realized what was planned for her, the night she'd fled, running into the desert with nothing but the clothes on her back and her mother's ring. The certainty that death was preferable to captivity. "You're the bravest person I've ever known," Neshoba said one evening, his hand finding hers as they sat, watching the sunset paint the valley walls orange and gold. "You chose the unknown over the intolerable. That takes more courage than any battle." "I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it." He turned her hand over, tracing the calluses on her palm. "These tell a story of someone who didn't just survive, but learned to thrive. You could have stayed helpless, waited for rescue. Instead, you learned to ride, to work, to make yourself strong." "You made me strong," Eleanor corrected. "You and Kimmy and even Chayton. You showed me what I could be." "No," his grip tightened. "We gave you space and safety. You did the becoming yourself." 2 months after Eleanor arrived in the Hidden Valley, Neshoba asked her to ride out with him at dawn. They went up into the mountains, higher than she'd ever been, to a place where the world spread out below them in a tapestry of desert and sky. There, with the sun rising behind them and the future stretching ahead, he formally asked her to be his wife. "I can't offer you luxury," he said, still holding her hands. "No fine house, no social standing, no easy path. Life here is hard work and simple pleasures. You'll face prejudice from both whites and Apache. Some will never accept us. Our children, if we're blessed with children, will walk between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. But, Eleanor prompted, seeing the hope beneath his careful words, but I will love you with everything I am. I will protect you with my life. I will honor your strength, respect your voice, and walk beside you as an equal partner. I will teach our children to be proud of both halves of their heritage. And every single day, I will thank the spirits that you stumbled into Sullivan's trading post on the day I happened to be there. That's quite an offer, Eleanor said, her eyes bright with tears. Counter-proposal. I offer you the same. Love, partnership, equality. I'll learn your language and customs, not to erase who I was, but to expand who I can be. I'll work beside you to build a life that honors both our peoples. And every day, I'll thank whatever force of fortune brought me to the one man who saw me as a person worth saving. Eleanor Hartwell, Neshoba began. Yes, she interrupted. The answer is yes. It was always yes. He kissed her then, properly, deeply, with all the restrained passion of 2 months' courtship, finally allowed expression. Eleanor wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer, feeling his heart pound against hers. When his hands spanned her waist, she gasped, and he immediately gentled, pulling back to search her face. Did I hurt you? No. Eleanor's laugh was breathless. No, it's been so long since a man's touch felt good instead of frightening. I need to relearn this. Be patient with me. I'll wait forever, if that's what you need. Neshoba's voice was rough with emotion. We move at your pace, always. If something frightens you, you tell me. If you need to stop, we stop. No questions, no pressure, no shame. I trust you, Eleanor said simply. That's what's different. I trust you. They rode back to camp, hand in hand, and that evening, Kimi announced the engagement to Chaitin, who immediately began planning an elaborate wedding feast that would require hunting every animal in the territory. Neshoba laughed and agreed to whatever the boy wanted, too happy to care about details. The wedding was planned for the autumn, when the heat would break and traveling would be easier for the few guests they hoped would come. Neshoba sent word to the friendlier traders and ranchers, to Sullivan at the trading post, even to some of the Apache families who'd remained sympathetic despite the band's split. Eleanor wrote a careful letter to an old friend in Tucson, not inviting her. The journey would be too dangerous, but telling her story, wanting someone from her old life to know she'd found happiness. But 3 weeks before the wedding, riders came to the valley. Eleanor was alone at the stream, washing clothes, when Chaitin came running. Eleanor, men coming, many men! Her heart seized. She abandoned the washing and ran for the cabin, where Neshoba was already emerging, rifle in hand. Kimi was gathering emergency supplies with practiced speed. This was not the first time trouble had found them. How many? Neshoba asked his brother. 8, maybe 9. I couldn't see clearly through the canyon. But Eleanor, Chaitin's face was grim. One of them has a picture. He was showing it to his horse, talking about a reward. Mercer. It had to be. Uncle Richard wouldn't come himself, but he'd send the man who had every reason to want Eleanor back. The man who'd paid for her and intended to collect his property. Get in the cabin, Neshoba ordered Eleanor. Kimi, stay with her. Chaitin, you know where to go. I'm not hiding, Eleanor protested. These men are here because of me. I won't let you face them alone. Eleanor, Neshoba gripped her shoulders, his eyes fierce. I can't fight and worry about you at the same time. Please, trust me to handle this. She wanted to argue, but the fear in his eyes decided her. Come back to me, she whispered. Always. He kissed her hard and fast, then pushed her toward the cabin. Go, now. Inside, Kimmy pressed a knife into Eleanor's hand. If any man comes through that door who is not my son, you use this. Understand? Eleanor nodded, her whole body shaking. Through the window, she watched Neshoba take position behind a water trough, using it as cover while maintaining a clear view of the canyon entrance. Minutes stretched like hours. Then the riders appeared. Jacob Mercer led them, a bull of a man, thick-necked and mean-eyed, exactly as Eleanor remembered from the one time she'd seen him at her uncle's ranch. Behind him rode 8 men, all armed, all with the look of hired guns rather than legitimate law. That's far enough, Neshoba called out, his rifle trained on Mercer. State your business and leave. My business is with Eleanor Hartwell, Mercer replied, his voice carrying the slow drawl of someone used to being obeyed. I'm her rightful husband. Her uncle signed the papers, received payment. She's my property, and I've come to collect. She's not property, and she's not here. The lie came easily to Neshoba. Mercer smiled, ugly and confident. Now, I don't believe that. See, I've been making inquiries. Seems a white woman's been living here with you savages for months now. Blonde, pretty, about the right age. His hand rested on his pistol. So let's try this again. Send Eleanor out, and we'll leave peaceful. Keep her, and we'll burn this valley and everyone in it. Eleanor's hand tightened on the knife. She couldn't let this happen. Couldn't let Neshoba and his family die protecting her. She stood, but Kimmy's hand clamped on her arm, surprisingly strong. You go out there, you die or worse, Kimmy hissed. My son has a plan. Trust him. Outside, Neshoba's voice remained calm. You have no legal claim. A woman can't be sold like livestock. Eleanor Hartwell is of legal age and made her choice freely. Several witnesses, including a U.S. Marshal, have confirmed this. Don't care much about legal, Mercer said. Care about what's mine. Last chance, Apache. Send her out, or we start shooting. Then I guess you start shooting. Neshoba's rifle didn't waver. But know this. You'll die first. I'm the best shot in 3 territories, and your men know it, even if you don't. So ask yourself, is one woman worth your life? For a moment, tension hung crystalline in the air. Then, Mercer laughed, reached for his gun, and Chayton's arrow took him through the shoulder. The boy had positioned himself on the canyon wall, invisible until that moment. Now he stood, bow drawn again. Another arrow nocked. Next one goes through your heart. He called out in accented English. Leave now, Mercer roared, clutching his shoulder, and his men panicked. Guns came out, and the valley erupted in violence. Neshoba's first shot took down the man reaching for Mercer, dropping him before he could fire. His second shot hit another in the leg, sending him tumbling from his horse. Chayton's arrows flew with deadly accuracy, striking shoulders, thighs, hands, painful wounds that disabled without killing, giving the riders a choice: flee or die. Most chose to flee. Within minutes, 6 of the 9 were riding hard back through the canyon, leaving their wounded and dead behind. But Mercer, fueled by rage and pain, dismounted and charged Neshoba's position, firing wildly. Eleanor didn't think. She burst from the cabin, Kimmy's shout of protest behind her, and ran straight for Neshoba. A bullet whined past her head. Another kicked up dirt at her feet. She dove behind the water trough just as Neshoba rose to take another shot. "What are you doing?" he shouted, furious and terrified. "Saving your life." Eleanor grabbed his rifle, aimed at Mercer's approaching form, and fired. She'd never shot a gun before. The recoil knocked her backward into Neshoba's chest, the sound deafening. But the bullet flew true, striking Mercer's gun hand and sending his pistol spinning away. He howled, stumbled, fell to his knees, clutching his bleeding hand. Neshoba was up and moving before Eleanor could blink, crossing the distance and pressing his rifle to Mercer's head. "Give me one reason not to kill you." "Because I won't marry a murderer," Eleanor said, coming to stand beside him. She looked down at Mercer, this man who'd haunted her nightmares, and felt nothing. No fear, no rage, just cold certainty. And because he's pathetic, look at him, bleeding, beaten by a woman and a boy with a bow. His men abandoned him. Let him crawl back to my uncle and explain how he failed. Let him live with that shame. Neshoba held his gaze on Mercer for a long moment, then stepped back. "You have 1 minute to get on your horse and leave. Come back, and next time I won't aim for your shoulder. Understand?" Mercer nodded, his face white with pain and humiliation. He staggered to his horse, managed to mount despite his wounded hand and shoulder, and rode away without looking back. In the ringing silence that followed, Eleanor turned to Neshoba. He was staring at her, expression unreadable. "You could have been killed," he said finally, his voice rough. "So could you. I was behind cover, so was I, until I wasn't." Eleanor touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "We're partners, remember? I'm not gonna hide while you fight my battles. We face threats together, or not at all." Something shifted in his expression, anger, melting into understanding, into acceptance. "Together," he agreed. "But Eleanor, don't ever scare me like that again. When I saw you running toward bullets," he pulled her against him, his whole body shaking. "I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just knew that if anything happened to you, I'd burn the whole world down." Nothing happened. Eleanor held him just as tightly. "We're safe, both of us. Together." Chayton climbed down from his perch, grinning despite the circumstances. "Did you see my shots? 3 arrows, 3 hits. I'm ready to be a warrior now." Kimmy emerged and swatted him upside the head. "You're ready to be less reckless. Climbing on canyon walls, showing yourself to armed men? You could have been shot." "But I wasn't." Chayton protested. "And I saved the day." "We all saved the day," Neshoba corrected, pulling back from Eleanor, but keeping one arm around her waist. Chayton's arrows gave them pause. Eleanor shot disarmed Mercer, and Kimmy, he smiled at his mother, "You kept Eleanor safe and gave her that knife. We survived because we worked together. That's the lesson here." That night, they tended the wounded men Mercer's group had left behind. None of the injuries life-threatening. All of them clearly unwilling to return to their employer. Neshoba gave them supplies and directions to the nearest settlement, along with a warning to spread the word that Eleanor Hartwell was under Apache protection, and any further attempts to claim her would end badly. When they were alone, Chayton asleep, Kimmy settled in the cabin, guards set just in case, Neshoba took Eleanor's hand and led her to the stream. The moon was nearly full, silvering the water and turning the valley into something from a dream. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. "When you ran out during the fight, when I saw you in danger, I realized something. I've been holding back, keeping walls up, trying to protect myself, in case I lost you like I lost Akimi. But today showed me the truth. I'm already all in. I already love you so completely that losing you would destroy me. So there's no point in holding back anymore. Eleanor's breath caught. Neshoba, let me finish. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you. Not because you needed rescuing. Not because you're grateful. Not because it's convenient. I love you because you're brave and stubborn and kind. Because you learned to ride even though you were scared. Because you laugh at Chaitan's terrible jokes and argue with my mother about the proper way to prepare corn. Because when danger came, you ran toward it to save me. Because you see me, not an Apache or a widower or a man between worlds, but just me, Neshoba, a person worth loving. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. I love you too. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw property. You taught me I could be strong. You gave me a home, not just a place to stay, but a real home with a family and purpose and... Her voice broke. And love. So much love, I don't know how to hold it all. Then don't hold it. Neshoba's thumbs wiped away her tears. Let it overflow. Let it pour out into everything we build together. Let it be the foundation we stand on when the world tries to knock us down. Yes, Eleanor whispered. To all of it. Yes. He kissed her then, and it was different from every kiss before. No hesitation. No holding back. Just pure, raw emotion and promise. Eleanor sank into it, into him, letting herself feel everything she'd been too scared to acknowledge. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. 2 weeks, Neshoba said. We're not waiting until autumn. 2 weeks and you become my wife. 2 weeks, Eleanor agreed. But Neshoba... What? She pulled back slightly, nervous. Tonight, when you held me after the fight, I wanted more. I wanted... She trailed off, unsure how to voice desires she'd been taught were shameful. Understanding dawned in his eyes. We should wait for the wedding. Should we? Eleanor interrupted. We nearly died today. Either of us could die tomorrow. I don't want to wait anymore. I need to be yours, completely. Tonight. Eleanor, his voice was strained. I want nothing more. But your first time should be special, not rushed by fear or adrenaline. You deserve. I deserve to choose, Eleanor said firmly. And I choose you, tonight, here. Make love to me, Neshoba, please. For a long moment, he searched her face, looking for doubt or fear. Finding only certainty, he nodded slowly. Not here. Come with me. He led her to the wickiup, the traditional dwelling where he slept. Inside it was warm, lit by a small fire, blankets and furs making a comfortable nest. Neshoba turned to face her, and Eleanor saw vulnerability in his expression she'd never seen before. I haven't. Since Akimi died, there's been no one. I might be clumsy. Eleanor silenced him with a kiss. So might I. We'll figure it out together. He undressed her slowly, reverently, his hands shaking slightly as he unlaced the buckskin dress and let it fall. Eleanor fought the urge to cover herself, to hide the last fading bruises, the imperfections. But the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and perfect, made her brave. Beautiful, he whispered. You're so beautiful. Eleanor reached for his shirt, and he helped her remove it, then the rest of his clothing. In the firelight, his body was all hard muscle and copper skin, marked here and there with scars that told stories of survival. She traced one, a long line across his ribs. Bear, he explained quietly. When I was 17, I was showing off, Got too close to a cum. The mother taught me respect. Does it hurt? Not anymore. Just reminds me that nature demands humility. He guided her down to the blankets, following her down, his weight settling over her, but held on his elbows so he didn't crush her. Tell me if anything frightens you, he murmured against her ear. Tell me if you want to stop. I won't want to stop, Eleanor said, but her voice shook, not from fear, but from the overwhelming intensity of feeling safe enough to want this, to choose this, to give herself freely. Neshoba kissed her deeply, and his hand began to explore, tracing her collarbone, cupping her breast, sliding down her ribs to her hip. Every touch was a question, and Eleanor answered with sighs, with arching into his hand, with her own exploration of his body. When his fingers found the heat between her legs, she gasped, and he paused immediately. Too much? No, not enough. Don't stop. He smiled against her mouth and continued, building sensation slowly, patiently, until Eleanor was writhing beneath him, making sounds she'd never made before, chasing something she'd only heard whispered about. When it hit her, that peak of pleasure that made her cry out and arch, Neshoba held her through it, murmuring words in Apache she didn't understand but felt were praise, encouragement, affection. As she came down from the high, breathing hard, he positioned himself between her legs. This might hurt at first, he warned, but I'll go slow. Tell me if, but just, Eleanor grabbed his face, looked him in the eyes. Don't close your eyes. I want to see you. I want you to see me. I want us to be present for this. Together. His eyes softened. Together, he agreed. He entered her slowly, carefully, watching her face for signs of pain. There was discomfort, a stretching burn that made Eleanor wince. But Neshoba stopped immediately. Breathe, he instructed. Let your body adjust. We have all night. Eleanor did as he said, breathing through the discomfort, feeling her body gradually accept the intrusion. When she nodded, Neshoba moved again, gentle and controlled. The burn faded, replaced by a fullness that was strange but not unpleasant. He was completely still inside her, letting her adjust, and Eleanor realized she could feel his heart pounding where their chests pressed together. Okay? He asked, his voice rough. Okay, she confirmed. You can move. He did, slowly at first, watching her reactions. Eleanor discovered that the fullness became pleasure when he moved just so, hitting something inside that made her gasp. She wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively, changing the angle, and they both groaned. Eleanor, his control was fraying, she could tell, but he kept his eyes on hers, kept his movements measured. God, you feel. I can't. Let go, Eleanor whispered. I'm not afraid. I want to feel you. All of you. Permission granted. Neshoba's control broke. His thrusts became harder, deeper, and Eleanor clung to him, matching his rhythm, feeling that pleasure building again, impossible but real. When she came this time, clenching around him, Neshoba followed, burying himself deep and crying out something in Apache that sounded like a prayer. They collapsed together, sweat slicked and breathing hard. After a moment, Neshoba moved to pull out, but Eleanor stopped him. Stay, just for a moment more. I like feeling you. It doesn't hurt? No. Eleanor smiled, tracing the line of his jaw. It feels like home. They lay tangled together as the fire burned low, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. Eventually, Neshoba cleaned them both gently and pulled furs over them. Eleanor curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. 2 weeks feels like forever now, she murmured sleepily. Then we'll make it 1 week, Neshoba replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I don't want to wait either. I want you as my wife, recognized by everyone, unquestionable and permanent." "1 week," Eleanor agreed, "and then the rest of our lives." The wedding took place on a perfect autumn day, the sky impossibly blue, the air crisp with the promise of coming winter. Sullivan came from his trading post, bringing supplies and his rarely seen smile. 3 ranching families who'd traded fairly with Neshoba made the journey, along with several Apache families who'd remained friendly despite the political tensions. Eleanor wore a dress Kimmy had made, buckskin the color of cream, decorated with intricate beadwork in blue and white, the traditional Apache patterns, mixed with a few touches Eleanor had added herself. Her mother's wedding ring sewn into a small medicine pouch at the necklace, a few embroidered flowers in the style of her childhood home. Her hair fell loose down her back, woven with wildflowers Chayton had gathered that morning. Neshoba wore traditional Apache wedding attire, fringed shirt and pants, both decorated with beadwork that mirrored Eleanor's dress. His hair was tied back with a beaded leather strip, and he looked so handsome that Eleanor's breath caught when she first saw him. They performed both ceremonies. First, the Apache tradition, where they faced each other holding a blanket representing their commitment to provide warmth and protection to one another. Then speaking vows in Neshoba's language that Kimmy quietly translated for Eleanor's understanding. Then a simple Christian exchange of vows and rings. Sullivan standing as witness, Eleanor speaking promises that came from her heart, rather than any rehearsed script. "I promise to be your partner, your equal, your home. I promise to face whatever comes with courage, to build our life with my own hands, to honor both who you are and who I'm becoming. I promise to love you not because you saved me, but because you saw me worth saving. And I promise that every day I'll choose you again." Neshoba's vows were equally simple, equally heartfelt. "I promise to see you as you are, strong, brave, stubborn, kind. I promise to walk beside you, not ahead or behind. I promise to listen when you speak, respect when you disagree, comfort when you hurt, celebrate when you triumph. I promise to love not just who you are today, but who you'll become tomorrow. And I promise that our home will always be a place where you're safe, valued, and free." When they kissed as husband and wife, the gathered witnesses cheered, Chayton loudest of all. The feast that followed was simple but joyful. Roasted venison and rabbit, corn and squash from the garden, wild berries Kimmy had preserved, even a small cake Sullivan had somehow managed to transport intact. As evening fell and the guests began departing, Eleanor stood with Neshoba, watching the sunset paint the valley walls. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." "Had doubts?" Neshoba's arm was warm around her waist. "Never about this. About us. Just amazed we got here." Eleanor leaned into him. "6 months ago, I was ready to die in that desert. Now I'm married to the most remarkable man I've ever met, part of a family that chose me, building a life I never dared imagine." "6 months ago, I was alone," Neshoba replied, "existing, not living, keeping everyone at arm's length because grief felt safer than hope. Then, you stumbled into my life with your impossible bravery and stubborn heart, and suddenly I had a reason to imagine the future again." Eleanor turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. "So what does our future look like?" "Whatever we build together." Neshoba's smile was soft, genuine, the expression of a man who'd finally let himself be happy. We expand the garden, maybe build a bigger cabin, teach Chaitan to be a man of honor, trade fairly, live quietly, prove that peace is possible between our peoples, and maybe—" He hesitated, then continued, "maybe someday, children, half white, half Apache, fully loved, a bridge between worlds." "I'd like that," Eleanor whispered. "All of it. The garden, the peace, the children. A life where we're judged by our character, not our heritage. Where love matters more than the color of our skin." "It won't be easy," Neshoba cautioned. "The world isn't ready for people like us." "Then we'll help make it ready." Eleanor's voice was fierce. "One day, one trade, one friendship at a time. We'll show them what's possible when you choose love over hate, understanding over fear, hope over bitterness." "Together," Neshoba said, the word both promise and prayer. "Together," Eleanor agreed. They stood wrapped in each other's arms as the stars came out one by one. Two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and built something beautiful from the ruins of their past. Behind them, the cabin glowed with lamplight. Smoke rising from the chimney into the night sky. Around them, the valley held them safe, a hidden sanctuary where a wanted woman and a warrior seeking peace had found their forever home. The world beyond might be harsh, might be unjust, might never fully accept them, but here, in this moment, none of that mattered. Here they were simply Neshoba and Eleanor, two souls who'd looked past the surface and seen the truth beneath. Two hearts that beat as one. Two lives woven together into something stronger than either could be alone. And that, they knew with bone-deep certainty, was more than enough. Years later, when their children asked how they met, Eleanor would smile and tell them about the day she tried to trade her mother's ring for water, about the man who said life mattered more than gold, about choosing to be brave even when terrified. Neshoba would add his perspective, about a woman who could have chosen bitterness but chose growth instead, who faced down armed men to protect what she loved, who proved every day that strength came in many forms. And together, they would tell their children the most important part, that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, but someone willing to build something beautiful together. That courage wasn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. That home wasn't a place, but a choice. The choice to stand by each other when the world tried to tear them apart. To see each other's worth when others saw only differences. To believe in tomorrow even when today was hard. "Don't close your eyes," he'd whispered that first night they made love. "I want you to feel love entering you." And she had, not just physical love, but the kind that sank into bones and transformed everything. The kind that made her stronger, braver, more herself than she'd ever been. The kind that proved, despite all the world's ugliness and injustice, that hope was worth fighting for. That love was always, always worth it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Neshoba and Eleanor's journey? Did their love story touch your heart? Your feedback means the world to us.